This is an interesting one, guys. So we're talking Mothman. We're going to pick it right up from last time. I'm not going to assume that people know the Mothman story, so I'm going to give a very brief summary. Mothman, for starters, it's humanoid. You know, looks kind of like me, but different. 6 to 9 feet tall. It's black, usually a silhouette. Usually, from what I've seen, what I've read, heard, people don't usually get a really good look at it. So it's like black. At night, of course, silhouetted, bipedal. It has arms. Its eyes are either red, yellow, or green, and they glow. So that's kind of standard, monster eyes, I guess. The interesting thing is that aside from it having arms, or people saying that it has arms, it also has wings, and the wings are leathery like a bat, and its wingspan is typically about 7 to 10 feet, which is important. I'm going to talk about that more later. Definitely want to come back to that. It screeches. People said it sounds kind of like the brakes of a truck. They gave other comparisons, but off the top of my head, I forget what the other comparisons are. But it'll sometimes screech at you. It'll sometimes charge at the person, and sometimes it flies away. Now, it was first reported by Roger and Linda Scarberry. They were driving with Stephen Mary Mollett. I don't know if I'm saying that name right, so apologies if that is incorrect.
Come at me, Stephen Millett.
So this happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, November of 1966. I believe it was November 15th, if I remember correctly, that they were driving, the four of them, they're driving back from, I think they were on a double date. They're driving near this old like TNT factory. They see this creature on the side of the road. As they get closer, they give the description, which I already gave. Ends up chasing them. They're driving, it's flying, and they end up getting up to about 75 miles an hour. This thing is screeching, clawing at the roof of the car, able to keep up with them. And then I don't know what happened after that. In my brief searching, I don't know if it just flew off. I'm assuming at some point it flew off. And then they reported it to, I guess, police, made the paper. After that, sightings continued for the following 13 months, 13 months to the day. So December 15th, 1967, it culminates with the collapse of the Silver Bridge in West Virginia. And people say that atop the bridge, they also had witnessed seeing the Mothman. Aside from West Virginia, it has been known to visit other states, including Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and New York. And it doesn't stay stateside. It's also been sighted in Japan, Mexico, Ukraine, and Russia.
I believe in Japan he's known as Mothra Man. There's a
I think they made a movie about that, right? Godzilla versus Mothra Man.
He's taller than 6 feet in that movie, though.
Yeah, and he has a nice cult following and fairies and stuff. Yeah.
So aside from the Silver Bridge, Mothman has been attributed to other disasters, including Chernobyl in, I think it was 86, as well as the swine flu epidemic in Mexico in 2009. So there are interesting things about the witnesses. So witnesses include average people. They just happen to see someone. Firefighters, military, police officers, usually more than one person at a time will see the Mothman. I was watching this video, and this one military guy had an interesting take. He said that he believes it could be a government experiment, essentially. It's not the first, it wouldn't be the first time that the government would have used animals as different projects, including bat bombs, Project Pigeon, and Project Acoustic Kitty, for instance. Have you heard of Project Acoustic Kitty?
No, I've heard of the other two, but I haven't heard of that one.
I got to jump with this one real quick because this is really funny. So
before you tell me what it is it too late to sign up? Because it sounds good.
Yes, this project
it's more about like, you get a couple turntables and you chill out.
All right, let's hear about this Acoustic Kitty.
Project Acoustic Kitty has been canceled. I think it was in the 1960s, if I remember correctly. But it was basically a cat. They trained cats. They implanted them with transmitters and microphones, and they were going to be used for spying. And during Project Acoustic Kitty, the very first mission, they were going to use it to eavesdrop on two men that were in a park, the two Kremlin that were in the park. So they go ahead, they release this cat, and it proceeds to cross the street, and it gets hit by a taxi.
Oh, that's
so the very first project was a no-go.
Don't they know that cats don't really like being told what to do? You ever heard of one of these things?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm wondering if this was like one of the an intern on the project and like, we'll give this guy a try. This idea is not going to end well, but let's give him a shot. Let's see.
What's the probability that Project Acoustic Kitty is like a 1970s progressive rock band or something like that? I feel like there's like a less than 0% chance, certainly.
Trout Mask Replica and Project Acoustic. Well, that was an album, wasn't it? Anyway,
So I had to mention that. So that is the long and short of Mothman. Still cited up till the present day. Allegedly, there were a string of sightings in Chicago near the O'Hare International Airport. There was a pretty cool video that I think was from that same area, if I remember correctly. It was kind of grainy, but you could see this thing like flapping its wings and flying through the sky, and it wasn't nighttime, so you could actually kind of see it, even though it was like in the distance and blurry. But I gotta be honest, I think it looked kind of CGI to me. So
see, here's the thing that I find frustrating as being someone that's curious in these kinds of things. That like you used to have to really give some effort to debunk something that looked convincing-ish. But increasingly it's just gonna be like, AI. And it's like, what? Taking all the damn fun out of it. You know? And then hoaxers aren't gonna have to be creative if they do create hoaxes. Like,
yeah, like you don't
anyway.
no more practical effects.
Ghosts are gonna have to work so much harder to be taken serious.
Yeah, that's there's
The hell.
When you're talking about the sightings that are outside of West Virginia, one of the ones right in Pennsylvania, like I came across this. I didn't know this that also coincides with like the same time frame as the like the one that was in, I guess, like outside of Pittsburgh, which I guess, you know, as far as like West Virginia goes, it's not tremendously far, you know. I mean, you're in that, you know, so, and it was like also in like 66 or something like that.
yeah, it was.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that one's got interesting because it's like the phenomenon hasn't taken off yet, where there could be like, well, I think I saw Mothman based on this other thing. It was actually like a very similar thing that also happened at the same time frame before it would have become like a popularized like legend or, you know, whatever. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I actually came across a map that has, you know, more than likely not all of the sightings, but it has like a fair number of sightings from 66. There's a huge gap. I think it might be one or two in the 70s and then up to like the 2000s. But actually it's mapped out and you can click on it and it gives you like the general description of what people saw. Very, very short. It's not, you know, not a whole lot of detail, but it's still neat to see. But you're absolutely right. In 1966, outside of Pittsburgh, I wish I thought to check how close in proximity it was to the other sightings, but like time wise, but it was definitely within that year.
We should throw that map in the links so people can check it out.
Oh, it'll be in the links.
Nice,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So Mothman is a harbinger of doom, right? Or a predictor of doom, I guess. Would that be right? Is that kind of the thing? Like,
I think the debate is a little over whether, okay, assuming the Mothman thing is a thing, that
well, let's just start there.
Either causes it or he is a sign that it's about to happen. So he either came and effed up the bridge or he was letting you know something's gonna go gone. Something's gonna go gone.
Something is going to go. But it's weird that like they do attack. The two of the sightings in the 60s are both attacking cars for some reason. And that seems like a weird way to communicate something bad is going to happen. Like
it's a good start.
like something bad's going to happen.
Cars.
I'm attacking your car. That's the bad.
I would have loved to see photos of the roof of the car. I would love to see what that actually looks like. Is it, you know, barely nothing? Is it like really like, you know, deep like claw cuts in it? You know, what does it look like? That's what I want to see.
Yeah, and like, so the folks that report the first report, the ones in the shabby hightailing it away from the Mothman. From what I understand, the Mothman pieces out right around the time they get to city limits.
Yes.
And then They go to the police station. The police are very convinced that they're convinced of the story they're telling, which is all we can really ask for.
Yeah.
And so they were very convinced, seemingly, that this happened. Just the story itself, before all the other stuff, is weird enough. Just because if you think so, if we go to like the naturalistic explanations of what this was, likely place for me to be going, but it's been attributed to the Sandhill crane, which has big red blotches right around its eyes, and it's a big bird that does appear in that area. Not black, distinctly not black, but okay, it's nighttime. You don't know. The TNT area itself is also reported to be maybe a source of like contamination of waters and things like that. And so maybe there are mutated versions of these animals.
Three-eyed fish.
Well, that fly with big wingspan. That's a big wingspan for a fish. And then the other one being the barred owl, which is darker in color and does reflect red from its eyes if you hit it with light. But what the heck chases a car that's going 90 miles an hour?
So I have a couple of things.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, just jumping on the crane thing. I have a funny story too. Like, yeah, cranes don't chase cars. Now they do when they fly. Their wingspans do seem rather big. When I was living in North Carolina for a couple years, the townhouse we were renting backed up to like a man-made lake, and had a small very small dock where you could launch a tiny little fishing boat, like something with a trolling motor, not like boats, it wasn't like that. So a lot of people would come down with their trucks, drop off their boat and go fishing for the day. Well, cranes apparently were making a nest near there because there was a lot of that kind of and we had them in those areas, the big, and this thing was huge. It was like the guy walked up to the dock and I guess it was, I'm assuming the male, they get very territorial when they're around there. The thing was walking up that, it was almost as tall as he was, and its feathers were all up. And the guy was like, "I'm just trying to go fishing." So, I mean, I guess they can be aggressive, but I still don't know that they chase cars. But even so, I wouldn't mess with that giant dinosaur-looking bird. It's it's kind of when they're kind of territorial. I mean, it just feels like I was like, that bird is big. I mean, this guy wasn't particularly huge, but the bird was definitely bigger than most birds I would encounter in other places I lived, and it was walking up towards him. It was so sometimes regular animals can be weird, but chasing cars doesn't seem like a thing they would do.
So both you said something really, really interesting that I want to tackle real quick. So the Sandhill crane and the tallest heron, okay, and both of these animals, though, they could be the Mothman, okay?
Right.
Average height, 3 to 5 feet. Wingspan, 6 to 7 feet. The barred owl, typically only 1 to 2 feet tall, and 3 to 4 feet of a wingspan.
And I thought that was a more likely suspect because of the color and the
yes.
It's got a rounder head,
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at photos of it and you look at drawings or whatever, it's like you can see the similarities, but
it was an owl riding a crane.
It could be carried by an African swallow.
The other interesting thing,
Mothman is just an owl in a crane in a trench coat. That's it.
the other, I'm thinking these two owls in a trench coat.
Yeah, 2 owls in a trench coat.
So the other interesting thing, so you mentioned dinosaurs. I had the foresight to look up pterodactyls because here's what I noticed. When I was looking up information about the various birds, I noticed that the ratio of their height to wingspan was 1.5 to 2. Their wingspan to height was about 1.5 to 2. So if the animal's height is 3 feet, the wingspan is around 6 feet, give or take. It's an approximation. Okay, so I was like, well, let's look up pterodactyl because these are bigger creatures. Pterodactyl, 18 feet tall, wingspan 36 feet. Okay.
All right.
Now the Mothman sightings, okay, approximately 6 to 9 feet tall, wingspan 8 to 10 feet. It's almost like a 1-to-1 ratio. And I thought that was very interesting. And I thought, well, and I don't have enough knowledge on aerodynamics and physics in this area, but it's like, can wings that are that small compared to the body and the weight of the creature, is it going to create enough thrust to actually keep it airborne? Assuming it really exists? I don't know, but it's very suspect.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing with like the like even like when you get into like other winged mythological depictions of winged beings, right, that have like human-y features, like whatever they are. Their wingspans are never big enough to give them. It's like you think of like not the biblically accurate angels, but the traditional, like medieval depictions of angels. Like they're like, oh, I'm coming to like visit you or tell you something. Their wings are like, whatever. It's like their wings should probably be like gigantic, yeah. And also too, their bones would probably have to be pretty hollow, like which would make them pretty
now,
suspect.
If you look at the ratio of a moth wing.
Oh, here we go. Go ahead.
I'm trying to figure it out. It's a little bit closer. There aren't a whole lot of stats on this readily available, but it's looking a little bit closer. So a moth body is right around 2.5 inches in length. This is a particular moth. Okay, there's going to be variation. It's actual. No, it's never mind. Wait.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's got to be even bigger because moth bodies are minuscule.
It's way off. It's way off. Way off.
And if you pick the giant butterfly from Japan, that's not Mothra, but the one that like Mothra is based on, I think that wingspan on that thing is huge.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. It's...
Okay, so definitely not a giant moth then. Yeah, no,
but now that you're saying with the crane kind of heights, I think that crane that guy was encountering was like, if my estimate, because I had to be looking down because I was kind of like up on a high slope looking out my window from my desk. It was probably close to 4 feet, and with its feathers up, made it seem more probably, and its wings puffed more imposing. So yeah, that sounds about right for
the crane. That's to be terrifying, like being that close, because we're not used to encountering something like that.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, and so this brings up something else to mind: the airship, and I don't mean the airship of my dreamed for solar punk future, nor of a steampunk world. So much but that kind of idea. Boats floating in the sky that have been associated with UFO sightings. Now, we know that doesn't seem like a very aerodynamic thing, but that doesn't mean that those sightings didn't happen. And so, sometimes things show up. They're not the things they seem to be, or they might not be the things they seem to be. And they don't seem to have the physics necessary to do what they seem to be pretending to do. So, is it that? Is it, okay, so is something else showing up, and this is how it's showing up, but it doesn't actually need those physics? Well, because it's not really a creature like that or something. I don't know.
Well, isn't the whole thing that in the, I came across this in term when they're talking about this. It was something like ultra-dimension or ultra-terrestrial or something like that,
yeah.
Right? So the I guess the theory is, and that's in like the Mothman prophecies book or whatever, right? That it's not, the Mothman isn't like an extraterrestrial. It's not coming from outer space. It's not aliens in a spaceship that are defined by the laws of physics. It's some other being that's like literally like a dimensional overlay, or like outside of our outside of our perception of reality, right? It's like something like that kind of thing, like one of those, like that type of idea. So I guess at that point you could just blip in and out of weird spots of existence because you're not really in existence. So it's
You're
almost
not
more like a
you're not
ghost
pinned
in a
to
weird
one.
way
You're
or
not like a
something.
butterfly pinned to a.
Yeah. To our physical, like our same dimensional reality. I guess I guess that's the idea. Anyway, I mean, so I
Yeah,
guess
well,
you know
yeah,
what.
and that's popped up. I've heard that with as we'll undoubtedly cover probably many times, Bigfoot. Because Bigfoot sometimes seems very much like a physical creature. Like the Mothman left scratches and things in the top of the vehicle, right? Very much like a physical creature. Big man.
Big man. Well, he's a different
Smithers,
cryptid.
big man.
I think I've met him. He's like 6'8". He doesn't have any wings, but he does.
So Bigfoot will sometimes do very physical things associated with like these wood knocking sounds and things and very physical kinds of footprints, right? Footprints and hair and stuff that is sometimes attributed to Bigfoot. But people shoot at it and the bullets don't hit. It goes right through. Cops chase it, it disappears. They go after footprints, and then the footprints just end in the middle of a field. So it's like, well, sorry if I dropped any profanity by during all this, right? Because I almost just did another one. So what the F? What the heck? You know, what's the explanation there? So kind of acting like a physical thing, like a creature. But then this is like, well, you know, bears and apes and things aren't known to necessarily disappear in the middle of a field, you know. And so, yeah, like, are we dealing with a creature that is not bound by the kinds of the things we're bound by, or are we dealing with weird wiggles in what holds reality together at various locations, points in time, or something? Which I'll shut up for a minute, but it might be worth going back to the whole what the heck Point Pleasant was in terms of munitions and warfare and things. So but I'm gonna shut up for a second. It's
Well, there's
right
a
off camera to get my other tea, but I'm still
but
listening.
there's a I was gonna say Chris talking about Bigfoot like thing like there's evidence and all. Do we know if there's like actual like physical stuff that the Mothman leaves behind? Like we like you said it attacked the car, but like you said you didn't know if there was damage and stuff to it. But if there's like no like I don't know whatever leathery skin or fingernails or footprint like because that's a whole different thing then, right? Like I mean maybe it's just something that's not there that you're just seeing, you know? That would be even more strange, right? Like, you know, it's just like it's like a mass like the mass hallucination or a mass, you know, kind of thing going on that's like
Right.
that this is how it's manifesting itself as, you know, because it's like at least you're saying with Bigfoot, there's footprints, there's stuff people find, there's a thing. But I don't know that like I don't you know wasn't sure if there is anything Mothman
A
leaves
quick
behind.
search isn't coming up with any physical evidence, but yeah, it seems like it's mostly eyewitness reports. I have my opinions on eyewitness reports too, but like I don't want to dive into all that stuff yet.
That's a
You know, it's
different
actually,
topic.
I was saying about that earlier today. You know, we're getting, and especially too when you mentioned the idea of, you know, AI, and I mentioned CGI and all that. You know,
Yeah.
we're getting to a point in history, in human history, where it's like you can't believe anything. You can't
Mhm.
believe your own eyes. You can't believe photos. You can't believe videos. You can't believe other people. It's like, what can you believe? You know, it's crazy, crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean it was already really problematic. I have a degree in philosophy, which will ruin your life, not just for employment, but it pulls the rug out of everything on you. Um, but there are big problems with epistemology in general, how we claim to know what we know and what we call certain, and actually like under, uh-oh, Mothman proximity alert. He's in the liminal space right now, but if he gets past Bloody Mary, I gotta run. So, okay, so yeah, I got so thrown off by my Mothman visitation.
Philosophy. What we know. What we know.
Philosophy and what we know. These figures come from a book called Flaw, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, or something to that effect, by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And it was a really good book. 1.2 million bits of information travel through the human sense organs every second. Of that 1.2 million bits of information, 134 bits per second comprise human experience. So, what happens to the other 99%? If you had $1.2 million and had $134 the next day, you would be justified in saying all of my money is gone. Technically not true. You'd be justified in saying it. Well, that's happening to our experience all the time. That's before you get to fakeable stuff. That's just our experience. And then that is very malleable when it comes to the... Now, the numbers are actually more depressing when you hear contemporary estimates on what percentage is actually getting through, because those are old numbers. But it's long been known that eyewitness testimony is one of the least reliable things about, say, a criminal case. And yet, one of the most convincing things for a jury, because people think that what they see is what they get, on the whole.
Yeah, I mean, I even remember this, like, the example that always gets thrown around. I think of my, like, high school, like, psychology class, even. Like, it was like a bank robber came into the bank, you know, it's like a woman says, like, I saw 3 of them. And it's like, where were you? I was hiding behind the counter. It's like, well, how did you see 3 of the, you know, people? Like, there could have been 2, there could have been 1. Like, how did you, yeah. It's like, but she's like, you know, it's like that kind of like idea of like, you've convinced, like, your brain is right there filling in the blanks of information, even if you don't experience it. It's like,
And that, we do that all the time anyway. Like, we don't realize how much of reality we're making up all the time. All the time. You can have, I'll have to remember, there's a great author on all this stuff. Lisa Feldman Barrett, if I hope I'm remembering her name right. But she did all this stuff on how emotions are made and how we talk about it. And actually what'll sometimes, or often happen, is that we have a physical experience in our body, and then we make up a story to explain it. And so this will happen. This is actually common for people, mild adult topic, but those that are consuming cannabis might experience paranoia. Oftentimes the paranoia is because they're having an elevated heartbeat, and their brain wants to make up an explanation for why that is. So it looks for a threat. And what we look for, we'll often find, you know, because we project stuff. And so, your takeaway, listeners, for this episode, if you find yourself in a similar situation, ask yourself if maybe it's just your elevated heartbeat. That's
in a preferably legal situation.
Yeah, illegally, of course, of course.
Yes, let's not get ourselves.
We want to give the impression of being upstanding citizens.
Let's just jump back to like the whole like something though about like something like the Mothman. It seems though it's not just like a lot of these. I mean, now granted the like the encounter in Pennsylvania is like one person, but a lot of this other one is experienced by multiple people at the same time.
Yeah.
So like they're filling in, you know, all of the blanks. If that's the case altogether, like it was like it's a, you know, it's, and like, you know, like Dan said, when the people got to this police station and they reported it, it was like they thought that this happened, like something. Well, clearly something happened to them, leading up to like the bridge collapse. Was there more people that had sightings of it? Was it like more like every, you know, there was a.
Yeah, I want to say there was like 100 sightings over the course of the year, I think.
Okay. That's a lot of really condensed ones, like even compared to something like a Bigfoot or something like a thing like that, you know, which makes it like kind of like definitely in that, if it is like a hallucination effect, it's like it's in everybody there for hallucinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and mass hallucinations are they'll just have to be a thing that we explore at
yeah,
some
yeah,
point. 'Cause
yeah,
there
yeah.
are so many. I mean, because oftentimes you'll have this with like UFO sightings, and then the connections between UFO sightings and sometimes called Big Man, but Bigfoot.
I think Big Man. It's the Big Man. Oh no! I was like, this is the worst. When you're doing a meeting pitch on coming up with, names for new like comic book bad guys. Yeah, okay, I think this is your worst idea yet.
So here's where I'm going with this. And kind of it's going from the idea of mass hallucination. You know, I remember reading somewhere that people, when something happens,
Yeah.
they tend to be in agreement with other people. They don't want to appear contradictory. So,
Ah.
so I'm imagining this where it's like, you have these two couples in the initial report and they see this thing. And it's like, I don't know, was that like 10 feet tall? And they're like, yeah, it's got to be at least 10 feet. Or maybe it's like at least 8 feet. I'm like, oh, well, maybe even 10. It's huge, and then people just kind of run with it. And then to keep up with the story, not necessarily like in a malicious way, but
Yeah.
people kind of like then say the same thing. Like, I saw this thing, red eyes. These other people said it was 8 to 10 feet tall. It must be 8 to 10 feet tall. And they just kind of go along with the story
Yeah.
unwillingly.
Yeah. Well, and it's a thing. So there's this author, I can't remember his name right now. He's like wrote on like ritual magic and stuff like that. And he had this saying, there are no clean feet in a muddy world. And I thought that was perfect, because that's kind of what we're doing all the time. You don't get to like sit people down in a lab and be like, okay, well, this is what their brain reacts like when they're looking at the real Mothman. And I mean, it's not. You don't get that clean stuff. You get these stories and you get these weird things, and it's mixed with all these other things. So like, people aren't that great at estimating heights. That's why they're like little things next to a Wawa or a convenience store for people that aren't from this little region. A convenience store doorway, there's like a height thing that people can be like, oh, he walked past it and he was 6 to 9 feet. That's right. No, he's a little over 6 feet.
Or when you see one of those rulers on an underpass, that means when it's raining, don't drive down that road. So why is
don't drive your
on
Mothman under a low overpass. Yeah. So people aren't that great at estimating that stuff. So, and are the same people giving wingspans that are giving heights? Are they thinking about whether they're being consistent or not? It'd be like, what was like the height of a person or a little taller, therefore, 1 to 1.5 times the size of a person, or, well, how big were his wings? Well, the wings were probably, I don't know, maybe 6, 9 feet. Well, it's like, are they thinking about it in ratio? I don't know. And not to defend the people at all, but I mean, the people actually need more defense. No one's defending the people.
I don't think, I mean, something happened that freaked these people out. So, I mean, like, clearly, like, that, whatever it was, like, it was freaky enough that they had to stop their dates and go to the police station, which is not usually something you want to just do on a regular night. It's like
especially when you're like hightailing it down the highway. I was going 90. No, I was going the speed limit.
Yeah,
and
it's like I mean, on a general night, if I, as a like teenager when I was out of the date, I don't think I'd want to end that date at the police station. It's like it was, it feels like a bad idea.
See if there are any warrants for my.
Let me throw this out there just in a little bit of a not so much defense of the Mothman as whether it's real or not, whether what's the thing or not, but just defense as the Mothman is like modern, like a modern cryptid, homegrown kind of hero that's reached like high levels of popularity. I do like that because a lot of other things, I'm sure we'll get into them at other times, like even in the North America, like whether it's like the Jersey Devil or the Thunderbird, Bigfoot, which can be linked sometimes to like the Yeti and stuff like that. These are things that are like very old. They go back a long, if not hundreds of years. Mothman's like 60s, gets a lot of popularity. Now he has festivals, he has sightings as far as all the way out to Japan. It's like gotta give it up a little bit for homegrown. And he doesn't seem like aside from the attacking the car part, overall, it doesn't seem extremely malicious or something like that.
As long as the bridge thing was just a case of
Yeah, he
wrong
didn't-
place, wrong time.
You didn't see Mothman with a, like, plasma cutter cutting the bridge support.
Gremlin style, like on the
Yeah.
wing of a plane.
Yeah. It's like, he's not out there like breaking the bridge down.
I gotta interject real quick. I'm picturing like a news bulletin, and we're looking for the following person in connection to the Silver Bridge collapse, and they flash up this drawing.
Yeah. Next thing you know, you see like Batman in handcuffs. Like, I didn't do it. I was in Gotham City. That's at least.
I swear.
That's at least.
I was in my
away.
secret location with no witnesses.
Yeah, I'm a Batman, not a Mothman.
Oh my god.
That's interesting you talk about the festivals though, because aside from Roswell, New Mexico, they've like a bit known for the alleged crash in the late 40s, and Mothman. I don't know of any other festivals that like pay homage to a cryptid or something similar. Oh wait,
Albatwitch, the Albatwitch, which is also known as the Apple Snitch, is a Bigfoot-like character in southeastern Pennsylvania, in York County. Oh God, I forget. There's a park, and once a year in October, they have Albatwitch Day. And I wanted to go a couple of years ago. One of the authors that wrote one of my favorite Bigfoot books was there, and I wanted to bring. I actually have 2 volumes of that book because it's a 2-volume book. And I wanted to get signatures, but Albatwitch Day. If you're in southeastern Pennsylvania in the rough vicinity of York County, consider it. October. I might be there.
The Mothman Festival.
Yeah. There's a Mothman Festival in.
Yeah.
I believe it's in like
Point Pleasant.
Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I think that's in like might be around that time.
Yeah.
I mean, the event, the bridge event happened in December, was it?
December.
But like, I think they have it during nicer weather days.
Yeah, I think it's in the fall,
it's better
if I believe.
tourists.
Yeah, and plus they also have that cool big statue of Mothman in town,
Which doesn't look
which is
at all
awesome.
what you would think. It's like Mecha Mothman. Throw back to Godzilla again. It's like a robot Mothman.
As far as like putting statues of things in your town, like that's, I have to say, I'm gonna give like a little bit of, before we're not into the judging up, pretty cool points for having a much cooler statue. I mean, most people just have like a guy on a horse, or guys flying kites in bad weather. I mean, like these are not like
Runner-up goes to not a cryptid, an actual creature that does have wings and a documented wingspan to body ratio. The Enterprise, Alabama, with the what's the boll weevil. Oh, I'm gonna remember the bug. Enterprise, Alabama. We probably don't have time for that story, but the short version is the boll weevil came in, messed up their crop completely, forced them to diversify crops, and thereafter they made more money than ever, and put a monument to the boll weevil in their town. A testament to how bad things can go good.
So you don't leave us hanging. What were the 2 crops? What did they have, and then what did they switch to?
It was cotton before everything. It was straight up cotton, and then they diversified to multiple things.
Oh, okay.
I don't. Listeners, please help us with our research by putting it in the comments. In the comments. The comments.
Would we also consider, is Puxtony Phil a cryptid? Because he has magical powers.
Kind of.
Apparently,
and is kind of obscure, and but I think too frequently seen. Even once a year is too frequently seen.
And he's
By many people.
Santa Claus is a cryptid too.
Yeah.
At that point. Which
not frequently seen enough, apparently.
Weigh in the comments. Is Santa Claus a cryptid? So let's talk about TNT.
Okay.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Point Pleasant, Virginia. So, but West Virginia. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Yeah, that's a big. That's a.
Let's not get things mixed up here.
Yeah.
So, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was a manufacturing location for TNT that was used in the munitions World War II munitions, the atomic bombs for Hiroshima that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The largest single act of violence in the history of the species. Not getting into the ethics of war, that's way above my pay grade. But the largest act of violence in the history of the species, and a tragedy, undoubtedly a tragedy for the citizens of those locations. Which also winds up being connected to prophecies around a tragedy in this other location. And so, like, let's talk about psychic vibes for a minute. Let's talk about ghosts. And could this be a psychic event that is linked by these massive tragedies? Now, a few thousand people dying or whatever in the I forget what the total was for the bridge incident. I think
it was less than 100, I think.
Okay, so okay, yeah, boom. Okay, so a few dozen people dying in a massive bridge collapse, right? Versus the untold numbers of people who perished on that day in Japan. Okay, these things aren't even close, okay, in terms of the scale, but it is just really weird, the association of the sighting of the apparition with the TNT manufacturing facility and its connection to maybe foretelling this other tragedy that was to take place. So it's like, so we've got mirror neurons as people. If and we've talked about this before, because you're watching a sport that you've got a lot of experience playing, you actually have the ability to have experienced that more in your nervous system and to enjoy it more than someone that's never played that sport before. Okay, and so when you see somebody when I see somebody go into a state of hypnosis, I can feel it in my body because I've been there so many times, there in quotes again. So is there something going on with that, with tragedy? So you got to take a leap here. Okay, this is beyond. Okay, this is like almost like psychic mirror neurons. Were people reaching into the future of the area, experiencing this thing, and were they tapping into this tragedy vibe that was connected by this involvement in that? You see what I'm saying here? Like it's hard to draw these lines.
I don't know. I mean, but
it's
but
very
then
blobby.
But then where's the the whole monster thing come into play? It's like
the people of the town manifested an apparition to externalize an unspeakable thing that was going to happen that they might not, and did their best to externalize it in a way that could maybe prevent a tragedy. Look, that's really reaching. But
I was gonna say, but give it even but just using that thing, it's like, I would say, like, just as a just a counter thing. It was like during World War II, lots of people were making lots of stuff, and these things that were used in, I mean, this is like literally, like, as far as like the government secrets go, the atomic bomb creation was people working on different things in different parts of the country had no idea at all what they were doing or why it was happening. There were the only people that knew those types of things were, isolated on a military base that they couldn't leave. It's like, so I mean, like, or the highest level of, in the military and things like that. These are like, so I don't think that people would have known, like, I don't know. I feel like that would have been a thing. And by the 60s, did they even know that was a thing that their town was being used for? I don't know. I'm wondering if, like, there's but I was gonna say maybe, like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just
Okay.
but did the TNT factory though create enough pollution that maybe it could cause mass hallucination? Is that a thing?
Can you coordinate mass hallucinations
Yeah, yeah,
with chemicals? I mean,
or just
it's been
chemicals.
tried,
How much forever chemicals are leaching? I mean, just into the.
Well, so
It's
this is an interesting take on what you're saying, Baba, is that so, you
Mhm.
know, when I envision people from the United States going to war in World War II, I envision, young adults, 18 to 24, we'll say, somewhere in that realm. And I'm sure you had people outside of, higher, maybe even lower than that.
Mhm.
But then I'm envisioning, so they come back, and 20 years later, approximately, okay, because the war ended in 45, this happens in 66,
Yeah.
21 years later, they're now, ballpark mid 40, young to mid 40s. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the way I view the world and humanity and people, like our fellow, brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
drastically different now than when I was in my 20s. So is there, if they had this knowledge that the facility in their town we used to create this tragedy,
Yeah.
are they going to view that differently being in their mid 40s now and have some level of uh, it's their fault kind of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
idea.
Like some kind of psychic guilt, even if they don't take it on themselves. Like it's kind of like we were part of this thing. Um, but my thought on it is not so much like the idea of like do the people of the town consciously know, you know, that they were part of it, so much as everything's connected to everything else in this little version of reality. That we don't actually like we affect things, when we take these big actions. And when you take an action that affects that big that's that monumental in the big human story. Like what does that do to the psychic landscape? I mean, I'm using metaphors here, but it's like we can think of in general relativity, space curves around an object, and that's what gravity comes from. It's the curvature of space, not the attraction of dense things to each other. It's the curvature of space. So, what if we think about psychic events like that? If we think about hauntings and things like that, or if you think about like major tragedies, like major emotional events as creating some kind of effect on the psychic landscape. I don't know. It's one of those things of like what becomes possible. At the edge of an ecosystem, you have more activity than you do in the depths of that ecosystem because you've got these two ecosystems coming together. It's got this edge effect. And so, well, what happens when you've got that interface with our stuff? Anyway, I guess we should vote on monsters. We're running out of
I was gonna say,
time.
are we gonna like this? But back in like, yeah, Mothman though. So are you saying like Mothman's like psychic manifestation? Then
Yeah.
you're like a mass psychic
Yeah.
manifestation.
I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna throw my hat in on
All right.
this.
Okay.
All right. I think people really in Point Pleasant. Okay. I think the people really were experiencing an apparition, something like a poltergeist that does allow for some level of physicality, but also some level of psychic energy. And like poltergeists, that may have some relationship to repressed stresses and things like that. Maybe this is just how it was trying to do what it was trying to do. Do I think it's scary? No, actually, I don't. I think people are scary. I think the TNT thing was scary. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm going to give it. All right, I'm going to give it 3 monsters because here's the thing. If I encountered the Mothman out, I would run like the devil was chasing me. Okay. But would I think it was darn cool if I could, I don't know, be at a thing where Mothman was supposed to show up? Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to do that. I don't want to be surprised by Mothman. 3 monsters straight across. Y'all go. I'm not from the South. You all go. Go.
Use guys go.
Yous go. I am from that region.
Okay, so do I think I think that they saw something happen. Somebody like they saw something, right? Like at least in the like the encounter with the car, or whatever. Like I believe that that's like you don't like have that something happened enough that it freaked those people out. I don't know what specifically that was. Like as far as like both, so it's like I don't know. Yeah, like um, I don't know that I'm not sure about it being real or and like some of the extra sightings everywhere else are just people mistaking it for something else. I do think it's interesting though, like the whole guy seeing it up in Pennsylvania. That's a very similar thing that before it got involved. So that's like, you know, there are sometimes weird things that are out there that we don't recognize or don't know, and like you know, people mistake things like you know, like the crane or whatever it is. Like, but yeah, so I do think they saw something. I'm not sure it's the Mothman now. If Mothman were real, yeah, I don't want to be driving along in the woods, like, and have Mothman jump on my car. Like, I don't want anything to jump on my car personally, but like certainly, no. You know. And if I saw a giant thing with glowing red eyes, regardless of whether I thought it was real, if that was my experience of seeing it, I wouldn't want to stick around. And considering Mothman seems to appear when bad shit goes down, there's a good chance, like, yeah, I don't think I want to encounter it. Now, do I want to go to the Mothman Festival? Yeah, I think that sounds fun. I do, like I said before, I do like Mothman. I like I love modern folklore, modern cryptid, like things that are coming up that aren't just like based on the same like, oh well, it has to be linked to something old or it has to be something. You know, I do really enjoy that. So it's like, so I'm gonna give Mothman a little higher rating than I normally would, just because of also cool factor. I think Mothman's kind of cool, so I'm gonna give him a 4 monsters, and because I encountering him would be scary, and then I'd have to eat my thing of like, Mothman isn't real, and then Mothman pops up, and I'm like, oh god, Mothman. So yeah, so I'll give him a 4 monster rating.
So it's interesting coming into this one. I was definitely like, no, 100% no. You know, I looked at, you know, the different sightings that people said, the whole ratio of the body to the wingspan. But Bob, I feel like you raised some really good points, especially the idea of people, if they have a hard time judging the height, they could have a hard time judging the wingspan as well, which I thought was a very interesting point, something that's very obvious. Yeah, I hadn't considered. I think at this point, most people have heard of the Mothman, even though they might not know exactly the full story behind it. I feel like when the movie came out, the Mothman Prophecies, I feel like that kind of like put it on the map a little more. I don't know that I find the Mothman that scary, though. I feel like every time, generally speaking, it seems to be the case that most times when people encounter this thing, it just kind of like flies away. So it's like, it doesn't really present any immediate danger. So I don't think it's all that scary. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of neat to encounter it because like that, I don't think I would be in any danger. So I'm going to rate this one kind of low, actually. I'm going to give this one just 2 monsters. 2 monsters.
Now, if you happen to see larvae that is 3 to 4 feet in length, stay away. That might be Mothman larvae, and then you might get the violent side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when they attack you when you're trying to go fishing.
Yeah. And don't fish with Mothman larvae. You'll get a Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
So,
I'll add to that. I do have 2 links to videos. I'll throw them in the description. They'll be on the website. They'll be all over the place if you want to check that out, as well as the link for that map that I found as well. I'll put that everywhere too, so people can check that out too.
So speaking of like tragedies and bridges, I think next week is going to be our Halloween special, right? So we're going to do that. So we're going to talk about things that have problems crossing bridges.
Well, I guess we should fly off like Mothman to a place we will not be seen.